What's going on, everybody? We are back here, DerekJ Speaks, to talk about the recent episode of WWE Monday Night Raw live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on August 29th, 2022, the final Raw of the month of August and the last Raw before the big Clash at the Castle pay-per-view this upcoming weekend. A lot of big stuff was hyped up on this show. Kurt Angle, WWE Hall of Famer, and of course, Pittsburgh native, was promoted to appear on the show, and the entire show was built around the crowning of brand new women's tag team champions, the conclusion of this several week long tournament to decide who the new women's tag team champions would be. A tournament that was cursed with several different injuries and short matches, booking that just has left a lot to be desired, and a finish here, a conclusion to this tournament and new champions crowned that did not sit well with many people out there. But of course, there were other things that took place on this show as well, including a few matches and a few angles, all building up to the big Clash at the Castle show this weekend, and a few angles that were built up to further storylines that will clearly be building beyond Clash at the Castle and require a little more further development. So we'll get into the nitty gritty of a few of the big things that happened on Raw, and right at the end, we'll tack on a few quick predictions for the Clash at the Castle show. So starting things off, we opened with a tag team match. The team of AJ Styles and Dolph Ziggler taking on the Judgment Day. Of course, Damian Priest and Finn Balor with their leader, Rhea Ripley, out at ringside in their corner. Just a standard tag team match. The fans, they seemed into it. Of course, Dolph is Dolph, but you got AJ Styles out there and people like him. But this match was just a backdrop for what happened afterwards. Of course, the Judgment Day got the win. It was Damian Priest who scored the win on Dolph Ziggler after hitting him with the South of Heaven. After the match, the heels were making their way to the back when they showed up on the Tron, Edge arriving backstage. He was making his way out to the ring to confront the Judgment Day when they cut to commercial. They come back from the break and the Judgment Day are back in the ring. They are ready for Edge to come out and face them. All three of them get some time on the mic talking about wanting Edge to come out there so they can finish him off and finish this whole thing off. And once all three members got a chance to speak, then Edge made his way out to the ring. I didn't know it took that long to get out there, but okay. So Edge makes his way out there, and before he can step in the ring, he also has a few things to say. He runs down all three members of the Judgment Day. He tells Rhea Ripley to watch her back. That next time she wants to put her hands on him, she'll have to deal with Beth Phoenix. And he calls them emo and says a few other things. Talks about how they're waiting for My Chemical Romance tickets. A few little one-liner jokes that pops the crowd. But Edge eventually gets up on the apron and he tells them that he did not come alone. And from behind are the returning Mysterios, Rey and Dominic. They come in both with kendo sticks. They just start wailing off on Priest and Balor. Edge sends Priest out of the ring. Rey takes care of Balor. Meanwhile, Dominic's all by himself in the ring until he is confronted face to face by Rhea Ripley. The two of them have a very long, tense stare down, and Rhea manages to talk down Dominic basically. Dom, he has the kendo stick, he's ready to go off on her, but she manages to calm him down and even convinces him to put down the kendo stick and give it to her. So now she's armed with the kendo stick. Edge and Rey Mysterio make their way back to the ring. They stand side by side with Dominic and then Balor and Priest pull Rhea out, and the heels retreat through the crowd. And so that was the end of this segment here. And then later on in the night, they made it official for Clash at the Castle. We are getting a tag team match, not a mixed tag team match with Beth Phoenix involved, like many people assumed we would be getting. Instead, it's just another random tag team match, but in this case, it is Edge and Rey Mysterio versus Finn Balor and Damian Priest. Once again, the star of the group, the leader, Rhea Ripley, is not going to wrestle, but I'm sure she's going to play a pivotal role in the outcome of this match, especially considering the fact that Dominic is going to be in the corner of his father and Edge. And there was another segment later on in the show. We had some nostalgia with Edge and Kurt Angle doing the whole thing of showing the pictures to Kurt, but then there's stuff written on the back of them. That old segment back from 2002, they kind of did a replay of that here, which was cute. It was amusing. But then later, both Edge and Kurt leave the scene, basically, and it's just Rey and Dominic talking. And Dom was confused why he couldn't be involved in the match. And Rey was telling him that Edge is family, and he's going to help. He is going to bring some experience to help take down the Judgment Day. And he wanted to make sure that Dominic would be in their corner. And Dominic reassured him that he would be. And all this segment did, and all this stuff with the Judgment Day and Dominic Mysterio tonight did, was convince me that Dominic is so totally turning on his father and Edge on Saturday. So we'll get more into that when we get to the predictions. Also on this show, there was a 6-woman tag team match. Bianca Belair, Asuka, and Alexa Bliss taking on a team of local competitors. I think some of the women have appeared in AEW before on like dark elevation tapings in the past, but this was just a showcase for the baby faces before their big match against Io, Dakota, and Bayley at Clash of the Castle. So of course they got the win, and they talked on the mic, just hyping up the match some more. Then we get Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle returns home to Pittsburgh. He comes out, gets a nice ovation, of course the "You Suck" chants. Kurt's out there with one of his classic jumpsuits that he used to wear. This is back in the SmackDown days of 2003. Looked very similar to that. Kurt's out there. He starts shilling for the pay-per-view when all of a sudden he's interrupted by the Alpha Academy. Of course, Otis and Chad Gable. Of course, Chad Gable and Kurt Angle, two people that many fans, myself included, have wanted to see paired off in some way on television for years now. And so we got a good segment here between the two of them. Chad Gable is telling Kurt how much of an inspiration he was on his career, especially as he is himself a former Olympian. And he talked about how inspirational Kurt Angle was. And now here Chad Gable is offering Kurt Angle a chance to join the Alpha Academy for one night only. Kurt Angle, of course, refuses, and Chad Gable is completely thrown off guard here, and the two then begin to engage in a shoosh off. Of course, Chad Gable does his whole shoosh thing, and Kurt did it back, and they were going back and forth, very reminiscent of Kurt Angle and Ric Flair having a woo-off back in 2005. So some comedy here. The crowd applauded it. When the Alpha Academy threatened to attack Kurt Angle, the Street Profits made their way out to the ring, of course wearing black and yellow, I should say. They come out there. Montez Ford is rhyming for some reason. Didn't get that. Wasn't sure why he was doing that, but he was rhyming for whatever reason. And they challenged the Alpha Academy to a tag team match right then and there. And Chad Gable accepted with the condition that if he and Otis pick up the win, Kurt Angle will be forced to join the Alpha Academy and have to remain under the tutelage of Chad Gable and learn from him. So there was some stakes to this match. It wasn't just any random tag team match. There were some actual stakes. And it lasted a good little while. And they had a very nice back and forth match here. We've seen the Street Profits and the Alpha Academy have a bunch of matches in the past. They've been good, but they just kind of blended together, and then you see them over and over again. So nothing really special match-wise, but with the added stipulation, there was an added investment from the crowd as far as, could Chad Gable and Otis pull off the victory? Could Kurt Angle become the new lackey for the Alpha Academy? You didn't know. So there was some intrigue from the crowd here. So we get the back and forth. Gable is taunting Kurt Angle, who's sitting on the outside over by the announce table. Chad Gable lowers the straps and he locks Montez Ford in an ankle lock. But then Ford reverses it, locks in his own ankle lock. Then he grapevines the leg. He's down flat on the mat when Otis comes back in and he splashes right on top of Montez Ford to break the ankle lock. This leads Otis to go into the outside. He gets up in Kurt's face when out of nowhere comes Angelo Dawkins, who steamrolls right into Otis and pounces him over across the announce table. I think he even took out Byron Saxton momentarily. So Otis is taken out. They target Chad Gable. He's flat down in the middle of the ring. Montez Ford goes up, hits that picture perfect frog splash, and they get the 1, 2, 3. And the Street Profits win, and they save Kurt Angle from becoming the new slave, basically, of the Alpha Academy. So after the match, the Profits and Kurt Angle, they're on the outside celebrating. They drink out of their red Solo cups. Then Kurt spits it out. He's not feeling whatever it is they're sipping on there, and he pulls out some milk. And the three of them celebrate together drinking milk. Kurt passes some milk out to some people in the front row, and that was that. That was basically all they did with Kurt Angle. Nothing huge, just a nice little moment and a big match with some stakes to pop the crowd here. One of the highlights of the show was a split screen interview with Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. They announced on this show, well, they didn't really announce, but they introduced Riddle, who has been without his first name for well over a year now. They announced him as Matt Riddle. So Riddle has his first name back, which is great. Hopefully he's the first of many who can receive their first names back. So both men are in separate locations in the building, having this interview conducted by Corey Graves. Of course, these two have been on site brawling and fighting for the last several weeks, even including on this particular day. They showed footage earlier in the day of the two of them fighting in the parking lot. Of course, video was surfacing online of the two of them fighting, so that was hyping people up for the show. And so the interview was conducted. The two of them are kind of talking over each other. It feels, kind of genuine, but it's still the characters. It's still Seth freaking Rollins. It's still Riddle. Riddle's a little extra mad and Rollins is saying some good stuff, but it's still all within the realm of the storyline, and not that it felt scripted or anything, but it didn't feel like anything out of the ordinary that you would expect to hear on a WWE show. So it was just very standard stuff. And of course, the big money line at the end, after Rollins finished off his part, Riddle came at him with saying something like, "There's only one man in your marriage, and that's Becky." Of course, Becky Lynch. So that was the big money line, the big ending point of the promo, and they hyped up whatever was coming next. Cut to commercial. Then when they come back from commercial, they showed footage that did not air when the two men were no longer mic'd up, at least for the crowd to see. So they cut back and show this footage. You hear the stagehands and all that in the background say they're clear, but Rollins, who's still mic'd up, he asks Riddle if he's still there. And of course, Riddle is also mic'd up, so he's hearing whatever Seth is saying. And Seth says, "You want to talk about my family? Let's talk about your family." "Oh, that's right. You don't have a family because your wife divorced you and took your kids, and they don't want to see your bitch ass anymore." Basically, word for word, what Seth Rollins told Riddle. Riddle is saying, like, what did you say? What did you say to me? And Rollins is like, yeah, I said it, bitch. And saying all that stuff, very, very real. Like, this is no longer the storyline stuff that they were talking about, like I was talking about before, where it felt very in tune with what you would expect to hear on WWE programming. This felt very much unlike that. And of course, the use of the cuss words and all that is a very useful tool to pop the crowd. And Riddle was talking about, where are you? I'm going to find you, and this is no longer me. I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to fuck you up, is what Riddle was saying. And of course, they bleeped it out, and Rollins is still talking trash, but now he's taking off the mic. He's leaving, and now Riddle's just there stewing. He's pissed off, and then he storms off too. Great stuff here. Like I said, it's very easy. It's almost a cheap pop to throw off the cuss words and all that kind of stuff, but it's not enough to just cuss and say the profanity and say all these words, even the ones bleeped out. It's not enough to just do that alone. It's in the way you deliver the lines. It's how you use them. It's how you say them. It's the cadence in which you're speaking with them. It's all of that, all in the delivery, all in the presentation, all in the feel. And this felt very real. This felt very genuine. Of course, there is actual history of heat between these two men, so I'm sure that kind of got channeled in here a little bit for added effect, but it felt very real, and I appreciate that. And this match that's been built up now, it was held off at SummerSlam last month, or I should say, last month in July. It was held off then. They didn't do the match. They wanted to build it up for Clash of the Castle here. So it's had time to kind of build up and become very personal. And I think as the last segment on the Go Home show before the pay-per-view, this was a very good angle to do. So good stuff here, and easily the best part of the entire show. Up next, we had Bobby Lashley, the United States champion, taking on The Miz in a non-title match with Ciampa out there in The Miz's corner. The Miz has had a very rough past week because last week on Monday Night Raw, Dexter Lumis appeared in the crowd and he abducted The Miz. He choked him out and he dragged him out of the arena and he basically kidnapped him. And no one knew what happened to The Miz, and still no one knew what happened to The Miz because all night you had Kevin Patrick trying to interview him, you had Adam Pearce approach him. No one could get anything out of The Miz and get him to talk about what happened with him and Dexter Lumis. He didn't want to say anything, but he was still visibly freaked out about the whole Dexter Lumis situation. You see him walking in the backstage area. You get a quick glimpse of a security guard that looks just like Dexter Lumis, but then they turn around, look back, and it's not him. So clearly in the mind of The Miz. And he was very much distracted during the majority of this match with Lashley, and Lashley took advantage of that by dominating majority of the match. But of course, Ciampa was out there, so he helped Miz gain control. Miz is on offense. He's taking down Bobby Lashley. When they have Lashley down, Miz is gearing up to hit the skull-crushing finale. We get a close shot in on The Miz, where all he's doing is looking off far ahead of him. And what he's looking at is he's looking into the crowd all the way up at the top of the stands, where a spotlight is being shined on Dexter Lumis. They even get a close-up shot with a camera right directly on Dexter Lumis's face. Miz is freaking out. He's telling Ciampa he's here, he's up there, he's right up there. Then they cut back. They cut away from Dexter Lumis. They cut to The Miz freaking out with Ciampa. Then they cut back to the top of the stands, and Dexter Lumis is nowhere to be found. He's gone. The spotlight's gone. No one's there. But The Miz is still freaking out, saying that he was there. He was right there. But of course, Miz has his back turned, and Lashley from behind locks in the Hurt Lock. And Miz has no choice but to tap out. Lashley gets the win. The U.S. champion and the title itself has been treated as a top prize on this show, But in this case, it felt more like an afterthought to a bigger overarching story here going on with The Miz and Dexter Lumis. And then later on in the night, they had a scene in the parking lot where The Miz was telling Ciampa he's going home. So he's getting in his car. Kevin Patrick approaches him again, trying to get an interview, but it's no go. The Miz doesn't want to talk. He's heading home. Then as The Miz is starting his car, you get a shot of the back seat, and back there is Dexter Lumis. And then the car drives off, and I guess we'll see what happens. Another big segment on this show involved Sami Zayn and the Usos, fresh off of a sick beatdown that they, along with Roman Reigns, delivered to Drew McIntyre on SmackDown the previous week. The Usos and Sami Zayn were out here on this show to hype up SmackDown this upcoming week, where we'll get a celebration for Roman Reigns, who has been a champion in WWE for 2 straight years uninterrupted. So a big celebration for him this week. Sami Zayn announced that he'll be the Master of Ceremonies, but he is out here on this show to hype up the Usos, the undisputed tag team champions. But then they are soon interrupted by Kevin Owens. Of course, Kevin Owens has reverted back to his OG NXT days with the t-shirt, the Titantron, all that. Kevin Owens comes out. He's in the entranceway. He's telling the Usos and the Bloodline basically that Roman Reigns still owes him one, and he's out here to say that the Bloodline, they don't run Raw because Raw is still the Kevin Owens show. And like I mentioned, he said Roman still owes him one. Jey Uso is telling Sami, like, if this is your boy, you better get him before I do. So Sami's back on the mic, and he's telling Kevin Owens that Roman Reigns doesn't owe anybody anything. And then Kevin Owens tries to have a heart-to-heart with Sami, telling him, like, you are one of the best wrestlers of all time. You're one of the greatest of all time, and it makes me sad. This is Kevin Owens telling Sami Zayn, it makes me sad to see you in this position, in this situation, being treated the way you are by the Bloodline, where they don't care about you, you're just their clown, all that kind of stuff. And basically saying how Sami Zayn is too stupid to realize what is happening to him. Sami is contemplating this, but then he gets on the mic and says that you don't know what you're talking about. You and all these people, you don't know what you're talking about. Jimmy Uso loves me. He looked over at Jay and he's like, well, we're working on that. But then he says, most important of all is that Roman Reigns likes me. And he likes me. He's invited me in to help with the Bloodline. And this is the real deal here. Of course, Jey Uso, this whole time, he's ready for this mess to be over. He's ready for Kevin Owens to be gone. He's ready to deal with it right now. Sami Zayn is trying to keep the peace. Jey Uso is ready to explode. And Kevin Owens directs his attention over to Jey Uso. Tells him, I still have not forgotten that if it was not for Paul Heyman and you, I would have been able to beat Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship 18 months ago. I love the sound of continuity. It's so sweet. Love it on a wrestling show. Love it on any show. I love the sound of continuity. So, of course, Kevin Owens gets in the ring and basically challenges Jey Uso to a match. And the two have a match. Referee comes out. We get the match. Goes through a break. And the two of them are having a very physical back and forth match. Some good action here. But it all comes down to the finish, which is further building up this long storyline going on with Kevin Owens, the Bloodline, and Sami Zayn, who was the focal point of this story. So Owens is out on the outside. He's going back and forth with Sami Zayn, egging him on to punch him and hit him when Jey Uso dives to the ropes, takes down Owens, throws him back in the ring. The three of them come up with a plan. The Usos are telling Sami, go grab a chair. Go get a chair. So Jay gets back in the ring. Jimmy, still on the outside, goes on the other side of the ring and is distracting the referee. So behind the referee's back, Jay has Kevin Owens held up and positioned for Sami Zayn to hit him right in the face with a chair. He has him draped up over the ropes. Sami's still on the outside, and it looks like he's gonna do it. He has a chair in position, but he's hesitating. He doesn't pull the trigger, and it looks like he's looking over and kind of waiting for the referee to catch him in the act. And eventually the referee does. It doesn't happen for a while. Sami Zayn is clearly stalling, but the referee does catch him in the act. And now Jimmy Uso, who's on the outside, he's going back and forth with Sami. The two of them are going back and forth. Meanwhile, in the ring, Jey Uso turns around and gets hit with a stunner by Kevin Owens. And Kevin Owens gets the win. He escapes. And the Usos are not very happy with Sami Zayn. But this was all excellent stuff here. Sami Zayn and his backstage segments with Roman Reigns the last few weeks on SmackDown have been excellent. They have been the best thing on the entire show. And now on Raw here, this was one of the best things on the entire show. Right after the Rollins Riddle stuff earlier, this was the next best thing, because this is just further building up to this explosion of Sami Zayn finally realizing that the Bloodline has been stringing him along this entire time. And whether Sami realizes that up front, or the Bloodline just gets sick and tired of him and they lay him out and they beat him down and kick him out, whatever the end goal is, the end goal needs to be Sami Zayn realizing what the Bloodline has been doing to him, and he reunites with Kevin Owens. And the two of them take on the Usos and take those tag team titles from them. I am hardly not the first man or person in general within the wrestling community to mention this idea, but I will further support it. That you can't not see what went down on this show and not think that that's going to be the direction that this story is heading in. And I'm along for the ride. I'm loving what we're getting so far. Great stuff on this show with everyone involved. And I look forward to seeing this story further develop as we move towards the future. We get an interview backstage with Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. It was an interview that was conducted earlier in the day in the empty arena. Of course, Johnny Gargano made his big return to WWE the previous week on Raw, and now he's being interviewed here, talking about how excited he is to be back, when he's interrupted by Theory, who comes up from behind. Of course, Gargano mentioned the fact that Theory hasn't called him. He didn't call him to congratulate when he and Candice had their baby. He hasn't called him in months. Theory retorted that Johnny Gargano has not called him either. He didn't call him when he won the U.S. title. He didn't call him when he won Money in the Bank. None of that. And it's because Gargano is jealous. So that was kind of the main crux of the segment here. And Theory basically congratulated Gargano and welcomed him to Raw, where he's now swimming with sharks. So this is going to be a match that will take place at some point in the future. Gargano's first big feud on the main roster. So just a little seed planted here. And then we get to the main event. They built up the show around the finals of the Women's Tag Team Championship tournament. A tournament, like I mentioned at the top of the video, that has been ravaged with injuries and really short matches that really, quite honestly, weren't all that good. And you get the finals here. It is the team of Dakota Kai and Io Sky against Raquel Rodriguez, I should say, and Aaliyah. The fans in the building really were not reacting to this match. They weren't really hot for a whole lot on this show, aside from a few things here and there, but this match in particular, they really were not feeling it. And the women were trying, they were trying to tell a story here. Aaliyah got taken out on the outside, so Raquel was at a 2-on-1 disadvantage. She's trying, but the odds are just too much against her. When she starts to mount a comeback, Bayley, who's on the outside, she interferes. And out comes Bianca and Asuka and Alexa. They run Bayley off. She runs away. But then Aaliyah finally makes the tag. But the heels don't see it. Dakota and Io, they don't see Aaliyah make the tag in. So when Io takes out Raquel, and the two of them are dispatched, Dakota, who's the legal woman in the match, she gets rolled up from behind and beaten by Aaliyah. And so Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez are your brand new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. An outcome that I did not see coming, and an outcome that I can't say I necessarily agree with all that much. Not a huge fan of Dakota and Io losing here. I felt if you're going to have these tag team titles back, which I was on the fence about having them back in general, but if you're going to have these titles back, at the very least, put them on a team like Io and Dakota. They don't necessarily need them, but the titles might be better off being with them. And so this is not an outcome that I fully agreed with. And many people online, from what I could tell before I started recording, were along the same lines as my thinking here, if not a little more negative and harsh than I am being. The match really wasn't all that good. The crowd really wasn't all that into it. And a lot of the matches in this tournament to crown new tag team champions in the first place just have not really been all that exciting. But Triple H seems like he is dead set on revitalizing these women's tag team titles and making them actually mean something. And if his vision sees that being putting them on Raquel and Aaliyah, then so be it. Maybe they're just transitional champions because any day now, Sasha Banks and Naomi will return. And they are just bodies for the two of them to beat so they can regain those titles. I fully expect Sasha and Naomi to return. I just believe that they are above those tag team titles. But they never lost them. So we'll see. Not the biggest fan of this outcome here, but I'm not the biggest fan of the tag team titles being a thing in general. So it is what it is. Overall, the show, aside from a few moments here and there, Riddle and Rollins stuff, and of course the further development of the Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens Bloodline storyline, and a few other things here and there, not the most exciting show since the Triple H era began, but not terrible. Just very uninteresting, uninspired, and really didn't do a whole lot as a whole to get me excited for Clash of the Castle. Which brings me to Clash of the Castle. Of course, the show is this upcoming Saturday, live from the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Wales. So I'm just going to run down a few of the matches on the show. Seth Rollins against Matt Riddle. This match, I expect it to be very good. I think Rollins is going to pick up the win here. Big 6-woman tag team match with Bayley, Dakota, and Io against Bianca Belair, Alexa, and Asuka. After the result of that main event, I think it's very clear who the winners are going to be. It's going to be the heels. It's going to be Bayley and her crew picking up the win here. You have a 6-man tag team match. Or no, not a 6-man tag team match. Sorry. It is just a regular tag team match. It is the team of Edge and Rey Mysterio against Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And as I alluded to in my earlier part of the Raw review, I fully expect the Judgment Day to get the win here after Dominic Mysterio turns on his father and joins the Judgment Day and becomes the willing whipping boy for Rhea Ripley. Maybe that's a stretch. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think there's a good chance that the Judgment Day is going to win because of help from Dominic Mysterio. We're getting an Intercontinental Championship match on pay-per-view for the first time since WrestleMania last year. So that's crazy. And it's between Gunther and Sheamus. So you know this is going to be a brawl. This is going to be a fight. And it is one of the matches that I am most excited for heading into the show. But I do think it is way too early for Gunther to lose his championship. So I'm seeing him retaining his title. Got the SmackDown Women's Championship on the line with Liv Morgan defending against Shayna Baszler. Not going to give away spoilers for SmackDown this upcoming week, but there's going to be further development in the storyline suspension of Ronda Rousey, and I think the outcome of that is going to impact the outcome of this match. I think Liv's going to win. I think she'll retain through the skin of her teeth, but I do think Ronda Rousey's presence will be made on this show. And then the big main event for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, Drew McIntyre in his homeland taking on Roman Reigns. 2 years as champion, he's faced everyone who has come in his path: Kevin Owens, John Cena, Daniel Bryan, Edge, Brock Lesnar, so many names, and none of them have been able to beat Roman Reigns. But for the first time in all these 2 years, it really feels like the end might finally be here. I, along with many other people, believe the stronger story to tell with Roman Reigns and losing his championship would be to lose against a returning Royal Rumble winner of Cody Rhodes in the main event of WrestleMania next year. But I don't think they want to wait that long for that big match. And quite frankly, I don't really want to wait either. I love Roman. I like Roman. He's doing a great job. He is easily the biggest main roster star in WWE right now. I was going to say full-time, but he's not even full-time anymore. But right now, in this current day and age, Roman is the biggest star on the entire show and in the entire company. But the dude has been champion for 2 years now. And now, for the last several months, he's held 2 titles. 2 titles that barely ever appear on the show. So, I love Roman. I love what he's doing. But with how hard they have been pushing Drew McIntyre and have been building him up in the lead up to this match, it would be pretty detrimental to his character and his momentum for him to go to his homeland and lose. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm thinking we're finally going to see Roman Reigns lose his titles. And I don't think it's going to be one of the titles. I think both championships are going to be lost here. I think Drew McIntyre is going to be walking out of Cardiff as the new champion. And that's it. That's my thoughts on Raw, and that's my predictions for Clash at the Castle this weekend. Let me know what you think about the show and what you think is going to happen in Cardiff on Saturday. Leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And of course, follow me on Twitter at DerekJ Speaks for far more content than I speak of here. I'll be back this weekend to cover Clash at the Castle and come back for All Out on Sunday night. So until then, take care.